Recently, I'm going to tell a story here. People like stories, right? The stories there. Recently, a guitarist who has even been here before, a great partner of ours. I won't name names. Should I say it or not? Should I say it or not? Don't say it. He went to set up, he brought the pieces to assemble a pedal board with me, right? Uh-huh. I spent almost a month just talking before we actually assembled the pedal board. Assembling the board, saying, no, he got there. He wanted like a big pedal board, wanted to remove some parts. I said, man, but why do you want to remove them and all? No, because I'm not using it. I said, man, but just because you're not using it now doesn't mean you won't use it later. Try it out. Go home, test it, connect it differently, reverse the order, combine it differently. In the end, he decided to keep everything. But then he brought it for me to assemble for him in this process there. I left my good pedal with him, with the little black pieces. To sum up the story, when he arrived, he went to get his pedal and said, man, sell me that pedal of yours. No, I said, man, what do you mean sell? What pedal is that? I want to buy it. Sell it to me. Trade with me, whatever. Man, sell me your pedal board just the way it is. Wow. Because the guy got used to the sound of my pedals that were with him. Interesting. Then I told him, man, I'm not going to sell you anything. Those pedals there, leave them here. I'm having a really hard time selling things. Leave them alone here. Take your pedals. They're good pedals, man. And keep playing. Play with them this week. You'll get used to it again. The guy is there, got used to it again, found himself again. So you see how we change, man. We need to give ourselves the opportunity to test things,
And there are two points that I'll pick up on there. The first is the matter of reference. We are the last generation that has a real reference of amplifiers.
I agree.
This is natural. I'm not saying it's good or bad. Society moves forward, right? This is natural.
Natural course of things.
So the young people, the ones playing today at 15, already have references that are completely different from our time. When I think about guitar, I did this exercise with the people at my church who are starting to play. When I think of someone playing guitar, what do you think of? Someone playing guitar?
Yes, an amplifier.
With the pedals, an amplifier on their back. The younger crowd no longer has this mental image. I did this exercise. What do you imagine? Pedal board and headphones, right? He said, imagine, but no, me with headphones playing. It's like the cell phone. Go ahead. How do you answer the cell phone with your hand? I did the test with my son. Son Seijo. I said, son, how do you answer the cell phone? He didn't get the question. He replied like this. I did this test. He hadn't seen the video on the internet. There's a famous video. He hadn't seen it. Son, how do you answer the cell phone? Actually, he did it like this. Look, because we do video calls with him, right?
Yes.
For him, it's no longer there. So it's important to understand that the guitar is such a traditional thing that we don't realize things are changing. And the second point is that we're talking about a reflection of the excessive information we live with. We live in a time when information, in the past, we used to seek information, right? 30 years ago. Nowadays, if you stay still for 5 minutes on your phone, you're overloaded with information. And within this information, take Instagram, every 2 stories, there's an advertisement. And the advertisement triggers the famous gas, which is the desire to buy things. I'm talking about just one. And then the guy has a board that he's been playing at church for a long time. And this happens a lot with people who reach out to me asking for tone tips. Man, always the guy sends something like, hey man, I have an MA80. I don't know how many years I'm wanting to change it. I'm going to get an Ampero 2. I always ask this question. Man, are you dissatisfied with the sound of the Ampero from Osmi? He says, no, I just want to change it. I said, well, if you change it, you will notice a difference. Ooh, because you're used to the Bosmi.
Notice difference when switched from GT8 to HD500?
It's a sure thing. 2 weeks later, the guy says, man, I went back to the ME because I couldn't get used to the Ampero 2. It's not that you got used to it.
The language too, right?
It's not that you got used to it. You just swapped one piece of equipment for another. The right thing would be to get the Ampero and make a transition. Then you understand, because to be able to compare 2 pieces of equipment in a real and honest way, you need to have experience with both.
Yes.
No use testing one 5 minutes and the other 5 minutes won't help.
No, you can't even form an opinion like that.
Exactly, because that's exactly what leads people to make incorrect purchases, and marketing helps with that, right? Because back then, I remember a documentary I watched, which I can't recall the name of now, that showed the marketing of Fender and Gibson in the 60s and 80s, how different it is from today, right? There was the guitar advertisement. I don't know. I'll give an example of Jimmy Page. And they would say when they sold Jimmy Page's guitar, the orange amplifier he used, right? A lot of people think he used Marshall, but he actually used orange a lot, right? They would say sound like that was in the 70s. Today, in the 2020s, there's an advertisement for a more famous guy like John Mayer. Now it's you have the sound of John Mayer. Look at the difference from sounding like to having the sound. In the previous advertisement, it included you in the process. Sound like Van Halen? Yeah. Today, it's the sound of Van Halen. Look at the difference, a small difference. Subtle, right? The industry today, not just with sound, but with cars. If you have a Ferrari, you're going to be a Formula One driver. If you have a Fender, now a PRS from John Mayer, you're going to play like him. So marketing makes you subliminally think about this. I said the wrong word, but you understood. And in the past, marketing was different. It was like, for you to get there, you could have this to help you reach that sound. And this with the internet multiplied by 20,000, my friend, you'll see a guy who buys a pedal today. Oh, I didn't like it. I'll go there. That's what the OLX is all about. I mentioned the name, sorry.
You can't say that. OLX should pay us.
The sales insight is straightforward. You'll see Kaim people listing a pedal today, another pedal sounds tomorrow, and another pedal the next day. Then you end up hoping for your friend's divorce to buy a cheap guitar.
Let me tell you one about OLX. I'm always looking. Oops, I said it again. I wasn't supposed to say that. It stuck. Mitch adds the beep.
OLX, you're missing an opportunity here. Look,
I look for different things, right? Different pedal things that aren't common. And in this game, two things happen. First, pedals from very good brands, which are brands that have made a very cool history in the instrument market. Let's give an example here. Tokai, you know, the Japanese Tokai, they launched a line of pedals. I have a Tokai distortion pedal. The other day I went into, I said it again, the place which you know what it is, and there was a Tokai pedal I didn't know. I didn't know it, but just knowing that the brand produced good things in Japan, I thought, wow, this is cool. Got it. Then I looked, saw the pedal model, and went to research. Then I went to watch videos on YouTube, checked reviews, and looked in forums to see what people were saying about that pedal. Man, I sent an offer to the guy. Would you accept this much for the pedal? Man, no one is going to buy that because they don't even know it. Got it. Only someone who really researches. Anyway, I bought it for a bargain, cheap. A really cool pedal. Today I'm on this path. Why? Because for me, that's the differentiator. Having something that no one else has. Having something that's different from what others have. So that's a piece of advice I give to guitarists, right? Think a little outside the box, right, man? Because suddenly that could be your differentiator. Today, for me, the guitarists I like the most, there are the classics and the idiosyncratic classics, okay? But from this new generation, it's the people who sound different, who aim to create a different sound, a different phrasing, a different type of music. Why? Because going for more of the same, man, doesn't make sense, you know?
No, I agree with you. And before I bring up another question here, still on this point of reference, I think it will complement what you said, which is the following. We, as you mentioned, are from a generation that is the last one to actually play with a real amplifier and have that as a reference. And maybe your behavior is based on the fact that the people we listened to were in search of that different sound. The first time you heard Van Halen in your life, you said, man, this guy is doing something completely different from what everyone else is doing. When Hendrix came along, it was the same thing. So the musicians we listened to were in search of a different sound, a different tone. So you were no longer wanting more of the same. And the point about the reference you mentioned is also interesting, which is the following. When I was working, I see today in the school group, we have a buy and sell group. And people are selling a lot of cool equipment there, but a lot of digital equipment. For example, I don't know, Fractal, Boss, a lot of good stuff, man. A lot of good stuff. And sometimes people are selling because they didn't adapt it to that equipment. And in the store, I saw a lot of younger people coming in, buying the equipment, but then, man, they didn't like it, like the sound isn't good and so on. And then you start to see that there's a lack of reference for people to reach a certain sound. Because, for example, we listen to Led Zeppelin. You know how an orange sounds? You know how a Marshall sounds? You listen to Metallica. You know how that type of high gain amplifier is going to sound? When you picked up the equipment, you can get sound out of anything. When you have a reference, you can get sound out of any equipment, in my opinion. Torquato is the guy on YouTube who has already reviewed a ton of stuff. And man, from Kuvaev to the Quad Cortex, he got amazing sounds if you give him a potato. With a potentiometer, he'll get sound out of that thing cool because there's the reference. I think the lack of reference for the younger kids nowadays, like you said, not having an amplifier, it's just headphones, all that stuff. I think that also hinders them from understanding that these newer pieces of equipment, these digital ones we have on the market, man, serve them really well in everything. The guy doesn't need to, like you said, switch from a new Mi 80 to an Ampero. Like, if he's satisfied with the sound, he has a good reference there to get the sound. He'll do it with the ME, he'll do it with the Ampero, with a quad, he'll get his sound there. He just needs to have the sound reference, right? From that.
Yeah, I think today there are, just to wrap up, 3 points that affect the perception of what you mentioned. And all of this is also due to social media, this modern life where, first, the feeling of being outdated. This is something that didn't exist before. In the past, we used to seek out the classic sounds, the more vintage ones. Today, you buy a pedal board, a new one is released, or later. For some people, this is more apparent. For others, it's more hidden. But some people get desperate. No, it was released. I need to have it.
Phones. You can see this with phones. This happens, right?
And marketing works for this, so that you have a Line 6 today. Oh, you have an HX Stomp. Soon the Line 6 will come out. A new pedal board will be launched, right? And Line 6 is the rock star of pedal companies, right? So those who have the HX Stomp, which is an excellent piece of equipment, even today, right? You'll want to switch, right? So this happens. That's the first point. And marketing works so that people have this, that people need to sell. Second point. My phone even rang. The second point is the issue. That these references in the past, you had free time, not free time, but you had quality time to reach the goal you have. This is something that, if I'm not mistaken, if it was Lucarta who said it, I don't remember now. If it was Lucarta, if it was Nuno Bittencourt, in the past, people didn't have their phones in their hands. In the 70s and 80s, people spent more time with the guitar. And today, people want ready-made processes due to the immediacy that modern life has brought. So I'll give a practical example to fit into what we're talking about. Your Strymer, when you bought it, how long did it take you to reach a satisfactory setting?
Well, man, I might be a person 1111. Very intuitive in that sense, man. I'll try to answer practically, okay? I'm an extremely plug-and-play guy, man. I press the button, so in the case of the Strymon, since it's a very good pedal that comes pretty much ready, 1, 2, 3, and so on, I just adjust 1 or 2 little things and in 5 minutes it's done. Let's say 10 minutes, but it gets to this point because of my background that I brought from way back.
There's a whole background, but you'll understand where I'm getting at. Then as the shows went on, you were adjusting and all.
Yes.
So there are people who, I'm not saying it's right or wrong, buy the equipment, and even before buying the equipment, they buy someone else's patch. Yeah, I know. The person doesn't adjust it. I'm not saying it's wrong. There are many people who don't want to take that time, don't want to waste it, don't have time. Anyway, but this exemplifies more how processes have changed completely. And this totally influences our experience with equipment. it influences completely. I mean, it influences a lot. Today, we have a very high level of consultancy. Any pedalist will find someone who sells tones, which isn't wrong. I do that too. I think it helps a lot of people. But the immediacy makes things, it distances us from the references. So, for example, we know that Bill made a pedal that sounds like a plexi. We have in our minds the sound of a plexi, the sound of a Mesa, triple Recfire. We have in our minds the sound of a Marshall JCM 800. There's the JCM 2000 that Bill loves. The classics, exactly. All that is classic. The younger ones don't have that sound in their heads. So for the younger ones, it works like this. I have the sound of John Mayer in my head. It's no longer about going through the process. It's about the person. And this will impact, I think in 20 years, it will have an enormous impact on how things are built, okay? Because if we look back to the magazine era, there was the mysticism of Steve Vai with Boss, you know? There was the mysticism of, I remember the first time I heard about Scott Henderson was in an equipment advertisement. Because fusion was something alien to me. I was, 13, 14 years old. And then the guy uses this pedal. I researched it. Today, that doesn't exist anymore. There are even people who have references for things without ever having had the pedal because you can look it up on YouTube. So I'm not saying it's right or wrong, once again.
Times have indeed changed, and nowadays that's how everything is happening. It's happening this way.
So this impacts those who build, just to close the topic, it impacts those who build pedals. It impacts those who consume pedals. It impacts those who sell, who do marketing. Everything has changed.
I think because of this, when it comes to the Chinese pedal, which is cheaper, for those people who are looking for immediacy, it's even more interesting to choose it because they can get it right away, test it, see what it offers, and say, okay, this is the sound I want, and go with it.
Exactly. Even because of the ease of buying and selling. Oh, I didn't like it. I'll exchange it. And the cost is lower. Exactly.